Things. So if you're a beginner, and I will see you in that part. This is where we finished at the end of the last part, and we are ready for some materials. Before we continue, do a check over though, because I looked inside my donut and I saw this, which shouldn't be here, obviously. So make sure you don't have any hidden meshes. That should definitely not be there. You've only got your camera, your donut, your icing, and your light, okay? Okay, so materials. Let's do some materials. If we jumped into our render mode, that little button that I showed you on the first part that takes you into rendered view mode, you can see we've got a lamp and it's lighting our donut in a very depressing, cold gray. So let's give it a material. Down here, the little material tab, and then we're gonna hit new. So just like before, the one thing we're gonna change is the color. Let's make it a nice pink color, and that looks pretty good. The other value that you typically want to change for a lot of objects is the roughness value. So you can see the further I go all the way to the left hand side, the more it becomes a mirror. So all the way at 0 is basically a mirror. And then all the way to the right is your like most porous object, like a brick or something like that. Basically something that looks like it doesn't have a reflection, although everything does. The roughness is just merely dissipating that reflection everywhere, so it appears as though it doesn't. But anyways, so we're gonna go with like a 0.3, something like that. It's pretty good. And then for the base of our donut, we're gonna give it another material, and let's go with a nice orangey yellow, which we will change later on, so it won't matter anyway. But that's good. Great. Look at us. We've got a donut. By the way, we'll add some subsurface SSS later on to make this look a little bit more milky, but for now this is good. Now we want to put our donut onto a marble countertop. So first of all, we need that countertop as a separate object. So Shift A, and the one we're looking for is again under mesh, and we're going to go with a plane. So a plane is just a square that's literally made up of 4 vertices. It's the simplest object, but the most versatile that you use it all over the place. And I'm gonna make this look a little bit bigger. So let's just scale that out with S and then click. Okay, so we wanna make our donut rest onto the countertop. So if I selected my donut base and moved it up, well, there's a problem, right? We need to have both of these move together. So if you want to have one object basically attached to another object while still being its own separate object, you parent it. So the way we parent it is, first of all, you select the object that you want to follow the other object, so the child, and then you select the parent. So holding down Shift, I'm going to now click on the donut base, and then to parent, it's Control P. Okay, or again, if at any time you don't know what it is, just hit F3 for search, and then we can just type in parent. Now, by the way, with parent, you get a number of options here. The one you actually want is keep transform. If you just do object, it means if you've ever moved the object like off its base or whatever like that, it'll then like clear its position. So it's actually not the one you want most of the time. So it's keep transform. Now that I've done that, if you've done it in the correct order, you should be able to select the base and then move it, and the icing should go with it. If it doesn't, it means it's probably parented the other way. So again, make sure the object you want to follow the other one is selected first, and then the parent is selected last. Okay. So now I'm going to move that up along its Z axis. Should go with it. If it doesn't, it means the search, and then we can select the parent. So selected my donut base and moved it up. Well, there's a problem, right? We need to have both of these move together. So if you want to have one object basically attached to another object while still being its own separate object, you parent it. So the way we parent it is, first of all, you select the object that you want to follow the other object, so the child, and then you select the parent. So holding down Shift, I'm going to now click on the donut base, and then to parent, it's Control P. Okay, or again, if at any time you don't know what it is, just hit F3 for search, and then we can just type in parent. Now, by the way, with parent, you get a number of options here. The one you actually want is keep transform. If you just do object, it means if you've ever moved the object like off its base or whatever like that, it'll then like clear its position. So it's actually not the one you want most of the time. So it's keep transform. Now that I've done that, if you've done it in the correct order, you should be able to select the base and then move it, and the icing should go with it. If it doesn't, it means it's probably parented the other way. So again, make sure the object you want to follow the other one is selected first, and then the parent is selected last. Okay. So now I'm going to move that up along its Z axis. So G, and then just middle tap and pull it up till it's resting on my counter. Haha, lovely. Now don't worry about this looking like cartoonishly bad in terms of realism. I'm going to show you a button later on, which is just going to make this look phenomenally realistic. That's going to be in some later parts. But for now, this is fine just whilst we work and piece the scene together. So for our countertop here, we need to give it a new material. And then underneath the base color, you can select not just a color by clicking the color, but the little dot next to it, that little yellow thing, doesn't look like a button. It is. If you click that, you get this this pop-up, or pop-down in this point, which just gives you a number of options, and the one that we're looking for is image texture. So essentially, it's replacing that import from a flat color to an image texture property. And it's now black, and it's asking you what image texture. So we need an image texture. Now, we could go to just Google Images and just find any old marble texture, download that. The problem usually with textures on the web is that what most people call a texture is not ideal for 3D. Most textures are good for websites, but for 3D, we need extra information to tell the 3D software how the material property looks. Like, how does it reflect light? What do the bumps look like across the surface? And all that information is never available on these sites. So to find those textures, you have to go to a separate dedicated website. And the website that I recommend is Polygon. And the reason I recommend it is because it's mine. It's my website. That's why I recommend it. No, I started it 8 years ago because I was pretty dissatisfied with the quality of the texture websites that were available at the time. So I used my YouTube money to invest in a team and some high-tech equipment. We went out into the world and we scanned stuff to a very high quality standard. And over the years, we've grown it to include models and HDRIs as well. And obviously a lot of this stuff is paid, but we also have a free range. And obviously we're going to be using a free texture for this part. So this is the free texture. This is the one we're going to use. And first of all, although it is free, you do need to sign up for an account. So you can just sign up with Google. That's usually the easiest one. It's a couple of onboarding questions. I would like to actually know how you, are you a professional and which one to hit down. But this is because it's 8K and we've got map. But once it is finished, it'll just appear in your downloads. Then you just unzip the zip file as you would normally. And then finally, you should see some glorious high resolution images. And ones with extra information like roughness. Very, very subtle, but will come through when we do the render. So back into Blender where we've got that image texture, we're going to click on open. Then navigate to where you unzipped it and then just click on the one that ends with COL in the name, and then just hit open. And one that ends with COL in the name, and then just hit open. And here it is. Okay, and it looks great up close. Only problem is, of course, look at that reflection. So bland, so fake. And as I mentioned before, fake is the enemy, and you need to squash it by just adding variance. So that's where our roughness map is going to come in. And while we could try to add it in here, this section on the right-hand side, it's actually not where you do most of your material work, because this is kind of like a simplified, dumbed-down version. It doesn't really... It gets a little bit complicated when you try and add too many things to it, because there's like too many menus and drop-downs and all that kind of stuff. So instead, if you go to your shading tab at the top of the screen there, this will change the layout of the screen to something completely different we haven't seen before. And lots of windows, actually too many. I never actually need this one on the right-hand side. So where... you just mouse over where you've got the divider and then just right click and then say join areas, and then you want to join it to the left to close it. And then I'll do the same here because I've never needed those. nose on the left-hand side. So I've just got my view at the top here, and then this one here. And the reason, by the way, this looks different than what we had before is because this is the material preview, but you can change it back to what we had before by clicking that. So material preview, by the way, it's the same. It's a rendered mode, but it's using lights, a different light setup. Basically, just an HDRI, which is like a fake kind of light and reflection map, just so that you can quickly preview materials. And really, you could use either or. They both kind of show the material, but yeah, let's use this one. Okay, but the bit that we're looking for is here. So this section here is your node setup, and it's actually an exact duplicate of what we did over here, because this on the right hand side is the simplified version. If you're just doing like a quick change, you might want to use this, but over here, this is what's actually happening to it underneath the hood, right? So you can see as I change this on the right hand side, that is also changing there. So they are linked. So the way nodes work is basically a left to right function. So we start over here with our image texture, it goes into our shader, which is the material for this plane, and then it comes out into a material output, and that's what is fed into the final shader. So essentially we could do anything, like for example, and this is one of the value of nodes, is between these two nodes, we could add another node. Like for example, I could hit Shift A to add. Again, same hotkey, works everywhere. And then I could add in like a hue saturation value node. And then I could change the hue of my marble to look blue, right? Or something else. So that's the power of nodes, and you could just keep going, adding in adjustments and everything you want. So nodes, very, very flexible. They do look daunting because they get all these like, you know, squid looking lines going everywhere. But it's very, very convenient, very customizable. Okay, but we want to add something to our roughness so that we don't have a flat single value roughness, which is what that is currently. We want to use that map that we just downloaded. So one, you could hit Shift A and then add an image text this way, but actually we could also just drag out from that input there and then just do a release, and it'll now say, what do you want to add in this input? And we could type in image texture color and then hit enter. Then here, go to that same place that we unzipped it, and then we're looking for the one with roughness in the name. So roughness in the name. And then hit open. Okay, so this is better, right? You can kind of see we've got some detail there, but it doesn't look quite right. Something is not going right. It's because when you add an image texture, Blender doesn't really know what type of information it is yet. And by default, it's looking at the color information, even though there isn't really color there. So instead we need to tell Blender, this is a special map, and we're just looking at the values, right? So essentially the color space here, we need to change it from sRGB, where it's a standard photo color, to instead non-color data, or just non-color, I guess they've changed it. But now you can see that looks correct, right? So look at all that. We got scratches, we got smudges. It's infinitely more realistic than what we had previously. So beyond that though, we could also add in little tiny bumps, okay? So bumps are in a place you would not expect. There's not a bump value here. It's actually under normal. So normal, you hear that word a lot in 3D. It just basically means the face, which direction is the face pointing, right? So if this is your face of the plane, you're pointing this way, that's the normal, right? But you can change the normal information to kind of tweak it to pretend like there is detail in that, okay? Essentially, we can plug in a specialized map called a normal map. Okay, so we're going to drag out from that normal map and then release, and then image texture. That's the last use thing. That's the one we want. I'm just going to click color, then drop, and then hit open. Go to that same folder, and then this is the one, the purple one. It's the weirdest looking map. You always know you're looking at a CG texture map directory because it's the purple one, and it's got NRM in the name for normal. And hit open. And just Just like before, it's not going to be correct because it thinks this is a color image texture, just like for photos. So we need to change it again to non-color data. And now you would think that would fix it, but no, it looks even worse. What did we do? The problem is we need to convert this image texture into something this can read. So we need to put another node in between here. So the node is found under Shift A for add, then vector normal map. So click and then just drop it here so it highlights between it, and then just drop it. And it will now finally be correct. And if I go full screen with control space, I didn't mention that before, but yeah, control space, and then you can go full screen, and you can see we've got very subtle little chips and divots across the texture along with those smudges, and it just looks way more believable. It means you don't have to worry about this part of your scene. It's just going to work, and you're going to get all that detail for free, and just makes life a little bit easier. But it is a lot of work. Like, what you've just made is a PBR shader, and yeah, it's a lot of work. All those little maps and everything, and having to know which setting is which. But it is a very common thing to learn, so that's why I wanted to include it in here. If I could plug my own website again, though, I will say we did hear you, because a lot of people say that. So we actually made an add-on called the Polygon add-on, which I'll actually show you how to install later on, because that is actually important for 3D, because you use a lot of add-ons. But to plug it very quickly, it actually does all of that without you having to leave Blender. So it'll download the texture for you. There we go. See, it's downloading. It's actually faster through the add-on. And then once you've got it, you just hit apply, and then it will do all of that node work for you in the background, and it'll just apply it to the mesh for you. So you don't have to do all that all the time. And in fact, most people, I think, if you're working on big scenes, you're using libraries, you're using add-ons like this, so you don't have to do it all manually all the time. But it is important to know the process, so that's why I wanted to show it. But anyways, this was our material, and we are happy with it. Well done. Let's go back to the layout tab. And now we're going to do one more thing. So you see our donut base here. Let's just isolate this donut for one moment here by hitting /, which I mentioned previously. Okay, when you're in /, this is isolate mode, which means it's literally turning off everything, including the lamp, which is why it's dark. But if you turn on material preview, then you get this. So this is okay. But if you look at real references of donuts, you'll see that it's typically whiter around the middle. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned before, the way it cooks, right? It's only like half submerged and then it's flipped. And it means that the bits that are closest to the surface are cooked less. So there's usually like a whiter part around the rim. And I mean, really, this is just an excuse to show you another part of Blender, which is texture paint. So at the top there, click the texture paint tab. And again, let's go into isolate mode with our donut there. Why are we not seeing? Okay, there we go. So what texture paint does is it lets you paint directly onto your mesh. But if we try doing it, you can see nothing's happening. And it does give you a warning at the bottom. Is texture paint. So at the top there, click the texture paint tab. And again, let's go into isolate mode with our donut there. Why are we not seeing? Okay, there we go. So what texture paint does is it lets you paint directly onto your mesh. But if we try doing it, you can see nothing's happening. And it does give you a warning at the bottom, missing textures detected. So to paint, you're painting into an image, and the image doesn't exist yet. So we have to give it one. So go to the material tab, and then here where we got base color, We set it up as yellow, but we're actually just going to override it now. So click that little yellow dot again and then say image texture. So now it's black, doesn't have an image. So, and instead of clicking open, we're going to click new. So we're going to be creating a brand new image, and let's call this donut base. We could make this higher res if we want, but don't. This is more than enough for a donut base. That's fine. And this will just save us time. The color, this will just fill the, it'll fill the image for us with a flat color. So we're just going to go for something pretty similar to what we had before, a nice yellowy color like that. And by the way, make sure you all the way bright, otherwise your donut is going to be a little bit dark. So yeah, there we go. All right, and then hit OK. And once we've done that, you should, I mean, it should be over there on the left-hand side, but if it doesn't pop up, you can just select it from the drop-down donut base, and there we go. So now we're in this state, look what I can do. Ooh, fancy. So, I don't know why I said it like that. Well, we can paint directly onto our mesh. So, to understand this, because it's kind of weird, you can also paint directly over here. And you might be thinking like, well, how does it know, like, how do I know which part over here is actually going to be painted over onto the donut there? You might not care, but it's actually good to understand how it works. So basically, this mesh here, it has to be unwrapped over onto this left-hand side here. To understand this, because it's kind of weird, you can also paint directly over here. And you might be thinking like, well, how does it know, like, how do I know which part over here is actually going to be painted over onto the donut there? You might not care, but it's actually good to understand how it works. So basically, this mesh here, it has to be unwrapped over onto this left-hand side here, because that's the only way to have a 2D texture, 2D flat image be applied to a mesh is to unwrap it in some way. I mean, there's projection, I'm not getting into that, to unwrap it. And unwrapping is essentially like, there is a meme actually that explains it. But if you have like a chocolate, right, that is wrapped in some tinfoil, if you flatten it out, that is essentially UV unwrapping. There are little places in that wrapping where there had to be a cut, right? And then that cut was wrapped around the object. That's what UV unwrapping is. So the reason this works for us is because the cuts are actually already in place for default objects. So this torus is already perfectly UV unwrapped, so we don't have to do anything. I did want to mention it though, because it's important to understand UV unwrapping. Anyways, so we could actually paint directly on here, as I mentioned. White is a little bit too extreme though. So I'm going to click that and choose a color. First of all, I'm going to select the eyedropper and then not click over here because that's got shading information. I'm going to click on the left-hand side so we get the exact color. And then I'm going to make it closer to white. So not fully white because that'll be too far, but closer to white. And I'm also going to change the strength of my brush. Yeah, I'll make about halfway. And then now I can do paints across it. And this will enable you to get a much more natural feel because you'll have, just like, in fact, I might even go a little bit softer, and that way you can kind of just paint across it. And this is very forgiving because we've got icing that's going to go over the top of it. But that's good. We don't want it to be too extreme. Let's just make it, I might go the other way, make this a little bit more saturated. Anyways, that's basically all we need to do. We just want to just dab our toes into the field of texture painting. I would say texture painting, by the way, it's one of the weaker areas of Blender. It's actually due for an update at some point in the future, but it doesn't do, like, you can't paint into like the height information or the roughness information at the same time like you can with Substance Painter, but it's got basic functionality. Now, importantly, this is an image, but it's not saved into your blend file. It still needs to be manually saved. So see at the top left-hand corner there, it's got image with a star. If you see that star, it means you've got changes that haven't been saved. So we need to go image and then save and specify. Now, importantly, this is an image, but it's not saved into your blend file. It still needs to be manually saved. So see at the top left-hand corner there, it's got image with a star. If you see that star, it means you've got changes that haven't been saved. So we need to go image and then save and specify where are we going to put our image. Because if we don't do this, we're going to lose it. So it has to be saved somewhere. So I'm just going to save it, yeah, anywhere. It has to be saved somewhere because it will not be saved as part of the blend file. Very important to know that. Otherwise, you can lose texture paint work that you've done. But there we go. So now to bring back everything, remember if it looks like, where's the rest of my scene gone? See the top left-hand corner somewhere? So I'm just going to, you've done. But there. There we go. So now to bring back everything, remember if it looks like, where's the rest of my scene gone? see the top left-hand corner, local means it's isolated mode. So that means you just have to hit / again, and it brings back everything. And there we are. So that's the extent of this part of the tutorial. As I mentioned, some of you might be wondering, when are we going to make that lovely subsurface scattering? We're going to do that in the future after we do the sprinkles, because it's too hard to see at this point. So there we go, guys. Join me in the next part, and I'll see you there. time has finally come to decorate our delicious looking donut with some sprinkles. So the feature we need for that is called geometry nodes, and you can access it by going to the top of your screen. If you don't see it, just middle mouse drag across and you'll see the tab geometry nodes. So it's adjusted your screen layout. Don't get disorientated. Your donut is still there. This screen on the left here, it's called the spreadsheet. Never needed it. Touch on wood, never will. So we can just close that, right click, join areas, and then just collapse it into it. Okay, so with your icing selected, click the new button. So welcome to the world of geometry nodes. So geometry nodes is actually a modifier. With your icing selected, click the new button. So welcome to the world of geometry nodes. So geometry nodes is actually a modifier. So when we hit new there, we've added in a modifier called geometry nodes. And what the modifier is doing is whatever we want it to, okay? So what this section down here is, this is a node-based system and it looks familiar, right? You got boxes with little lines and it's the exact same type of system that was used in our materials, right? But it's a completely different system, okay? So the same nodes will not be referenced between the completely different systems. So the way this works is our mesh that we've got here of our icing is what is being represented on the left-hand side with your input. It's then taking that mesh and it's feeding it all the way to the right, and it's going to spit out whatever is in your group output. So currently nothing has changed because there's nothing between those points. But if I was, for example, don't follow me, but just as an example, if I was to add a set position node, drop this in here, and then change the position of the icing along the Z axis, you can see it's raised it. Okay, now the mesh, if I go into edit mode, is still there. The mesh has not changed. So we're not actually moving the object. This is just happening after the fact via a modifier, okay? Now, obviously this would be a rather pointless use for geometry nodes to move it because you could just move it. But as an example, let's say, I don't know, you had a scene where lots of objects, some of them are raised, some of them are not, and you wanted to quickly change them. What you could do with geometry nodes, in this case, you could actually expose this offset value by dragging it to the left over here. And when you do that, you can see it's now appeared over here in our modifier stack. What that means is whenever I'm in another part of Blender, say I'm like building stuff, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to quickly, change the height of that icing, I've got it there whenever I need to. So essentially, this system enables you to build your own tool that does something that you want it to do in a really flexible way. So it's really powerful. And before geometry nodes, I mean, Blender was kind of limited in what you can do, but I'll throw some examples here. But in the last 2 years since it's been in Blender, people have done some wild stuff with it. And most of this stuff really was just not possible in Blender before without doing custom scripting. So it's really opened up the doors. So it is a very different system, like it's a different way of working than just hands-on in 3D, but it's a really flexible, really valuable system. So any time spent learning geometry nodes, I think is time well spent. So we want to do sprinkles, and to do that we need to first of all scatter some points onto our mesh. So to do that, hit Shift A for add, and then we're looking for point, distribute points on faces. Okay, and then it's just going to put you in a placement state. And if you just mouse over that line there till it lights up, if you click, it's going to automatically connect it for you. And now you can see we've got points on our icing and a density value. Great. But you might notice the icing has actually disappeared. Ooh. Now the reason for that is we've told it, okay, take that icing object and convert it into points and then just give us the points back. Okay, so what we need to do is say, yes, we want the points, but we also want the original mesh. So we can do that by adding in a node that you use all the time, which is Shift A, Geometry, Join Geometry. So you'll find this node in probably any geometry nodes tutorial. Very versatile. So drop it in here after the points, and you'll notice this input here is a different shape. So normally inputs are circles or triangles or whatnot. This one is a long and elongated shape to signify that it can accept multiple inputs. So unlike these where you can only accept one, this can accept many. So what we need to do is take the output of our original mesh and then feed it over to here. And now we have both the original mesh and we have our points, and they're being combined together and then put into our output. Okay, very cool, awesome. All right, so if we were to give this a render right now, you would actually see nothing because these points don't physically exist. They just exist in the 3D space. If we want them to show up in the render, we have to tell it what do you want to render them as. So for that, we need to add an object to be our sprinkle. So your sprinkle could be whatever you want. We're actually going to make two different types of sprinkles in this donut series. So we're going to start though with a very simple one, just a round ball. So just like you would add another object normally, Shift A, and then go mesh, and then go UV sphere. Now, this sphere is going to be referenced for every single sprinkle. Okay, so we want to go as low res as we can get away with. So I'm going to go with 12 segments and then 8 rings. If you're on a really slow computer and you think this is really going to suffer later on, you could go even lower, but I don't want to go too low because otherwise we're going to see that jagged edge because it's a rounded form. So I don't want to go too much lower than that. But I do want to adjust the scale because obviously this needs to be a tiny little sprinkle. So let's go 0.01. Okay, awesome. All right, now with our icing selected again, you'll notice, by the way, that if you click another object, you don't see your nodes because it's only going to show you the active object's geometry nodes. So if you want the nodes to just be there no matter what, if you click the pin button there, that means no matter what is selected, it's only going to be showing you this object's, the one that we pinned, geometry nodes. Okay, all right, so to reference, we need to reference that little sphere that we've just created in our geometry node system. And you can do it very easily just by dragging down from your outline up here, just dragging it down into your geometry nodes and dropping it. Okay. So now let's just create some room here. Take a little bit of space. Okay. And what I need to do is add another node to reference this object. And the node is Shift A, instances on points, the top one. Okay, and then I want to drop it in here between distribute points on faces and my join geometry. So drop it in right there till it lights up. Take a little bit of space. Okay, and what I need to do is add another node to reference this object. And the node is Shift A, instances on points, the top one. Okay, and then I want to drop it in here between distribute points on faces and my join geometry. So drop it in right there till it lights up. Now the points have disappeared because we're now saying replace those points with whatever is in that instance input. So I'm going to take my geometry from my object info and drag it into the instance. And look at that, we have got our spheres appearing all over it. And if I increase the density, we've got sprinkles. And if I do a render, it will actually display. Doesn't look very good, hey, but it does work, which is the main thing right now. Okay, so first things first, you'll notice Notice that as we increase the density, first problem is that they're crowding each other. They are straight up overlapping each other with no respect for its fellow sprinkle, right? Because it's just a random distribution. So we can change that by going here in our distribute points on faces, change it from random distribution to Poisson disc distribution. Poisson, what a name. So it's changed, but that's just because it's changed your density max. So just increase it again. With this Poisson disc distribution, you get this extra value here, distance min. So now if we can set a low value, we can start to delete. It's almost like each one of those points now is going to have a little radius around it. And if it detects a point within that radius, it's going to delete it. So we just need to increase it slowly, very, very slowly, until we can't see them intersecting anymore. To about there, honestly. If you go too high, like if you really wanted to make sure that they weren't touching, you go really high, but it starts to look like too evenly spaced, you know, like, yeah, it's not actually registering the other objects. It's like it's just doing this little radius thing, which just happens to be perfect for a ball-shaped object, but it's not like an advanced, like it's going to try to fill in all the gaps for you. So yeah, you just kind of, I usually set it to like a little bit of clipping is okay, but I don't want there to be too much. But let's go, yeah, something, I don't know, something like that. We'll actually adjust this later on. I'm just doing it just for this point. All right, a much bigger problem, if I hit Control Tab to go full screen here, if I look at my mesh, I've got sprinkles everywhere. And in fact, I've actually got sprinkles underneath the icing. And that's not good because it's actually going to put that in the render. Even though you won't see it, your computer is going to use resources to render little individual balls underneath the icing, which is not what we want, obviously. So, going back here, what we need to do to fix this is we need to do weight painting, okay? It's not texture painting, it's a special thing called weight painting. So with your icing selected, if you go from your object mode, you'll see one there called weight paint. Now, your mesh will become blue, and weight paint is actually referenced in multiple parts of Blender. Like if you're doing rigging and animation, you would use weight painting a lot during the rigging step to assign values to certain bones. Essentially what it's doing is it's allowing you to paint a value between 0 and 1 onto any part of the mesh and then reference that however you want. So we can then reference that weight paint mask in our geometry nodes and use this almost as, well, exactly as a mask for our sprinkles. So if we just do some paint right here on it, you'll see that we have some colors, right? Now these colors aren't going to appear in the render. It's just for you to visualize those values. The blue value means a value of 0, and the red value is a 0 of 1. I believe actually in maybe not the next version of Blender, but maybe the version, I don't know, but they're planning to change the colors of this. So depending on the value, on how late watching this you are, your colors might be different here, but it should be the same. Essentially, you should have a brush of 1, and you should be able to paint from 0, which would give a blue value in this case, to a value of 1. So whatever is 1, whatever is red, is where our sprinkles will go. But you'll notice that this is not having any effect, okay? So we need to reference it. Now, that weight paint that we just did is actually, if we go to our data tab here, it's actually a vertex group. Okay, so that's where that paint went. So you could actually create multiple weight paint types just by like creating them here. But we've just created one and it's added one here for us. So we can give it a name by double clicking it, and let's call it sprinkle mask. Okay. In fact, is it a mask? It's more of a density, sprinkle density, I guess, because it's not a masking out. Anyway, all right, sprinkle density. Okay, and where I want to reference this in my geometry node stack is in the distribute points on faces. There is one value here called a density factor, which we got when we used the Poisson disk thing. And this is just a value of 0 to 1. Very convenient. So if I drag out from here and then release, I can add in a new node and it'll just automatically connect it. And the node that you're looking for is called the named attribute. Don't feel bad if you're like, well, how would I know that it's called the named attribute? Because it's called vertex groups over here. You think like, okay, I'm going to type in vertex group, but it's an attribute, but it's one of many attributes, and geometry nodes can do many things. So it's just called the named attribute. So anyways, all right. So underneath name, we're just going to click that box and you'll get a pop up or pop down, and you're looking for sprinkle density. And there it is. Haha. So now going back into weight paint mode, we can act like an artist and put the sprinkles wherever we want, sprinkles on our donut, which is really cool. So sprinkles are typically, they're like on a on a plate, and then the wet donut with icing on it is just like dabbed onto it. So you get like a heavy amount of sprinkles right on the top like that, and then less around the sides. And then I usually do like a few like dabs like this, just for some variance. And then also if you hold down control, that will do so the weight that's being painted is 1, but if I hold down control, it's going to do a negative value. And I can adjust my strength there as well. And I can just do some negative paints across it. Maybe a couple here as well. And I'm trying to deliberately make it look choppy, because I find that if you make it look too like uniform, then it just looks very boring and artificial. Because the real world would have more sprinkles collecting in certain areas than others, right? Maybe it's just like wetter on that part, right? So more would stick to it. Or more force was put on that part of the plate as the donut was dabbed into it, right? You just kind of have to think of this stuff, because in the digital world, it's far too easy to make something that looks predictable and boring, and we don't want that. But there we go, something like that. And you could obviously finesse it and make it better than what it is, but that's what we've got. You'll notice each of these spheres have a very jagged looking shape, and that's because the sphere itself down here. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this. If you want to quickly zoom to an object without having to find it and pan around, number pad period key. Probably should have mentioned that before, but we haven't really needed it because we have not worked with that many objects, but that'll focus to that object. If you're on a laptop, by the way, if you hold down the tilde key, that'll bring up this section here, and then you've got view selected right there. So tilde is that key underneath your escape key. But anyways, so this is what our sphere looks like. So right click, shade smooth, and now all those sprinkles have a shade smooth. Haha, very nice. All right, now let me just show you a quick little issue that you might run into. If you were to duplicate your donut and create 2, and then on the second donut, you're like, hey, I want to have some spice.
me just show you a quick little issue that you might run into. If you were to duplicate your donut and create 2, and then on the second donut, you're like, hey, I want to have some spice in my scene. I don't want to have the exact same count of sprinkles across both donuts. Let's give a different value to this one over here. Well, you can see that they are now sharing the same value because this node group here is being linked across both objects. But if you wanted, I mean, you could make it its own single object so that they're not linked. But if you wanted everything else to remain the same, so that let's say you change the sprinkle at some point, that's preserved across it. But that one value you want to be different across multiple objects, you can expose it. So just like what I did at the start, if I drag out from the value I want to expose, and then I put it up to here in my group input, the empty slot, if I just release it, it's now disappeared, the value's disappeared from here, and it's now appeared in my modifier stack over here. And now I can put in a different value. So this has now got a value of 2000, and this one is 500. So essentially, by dragging it out and exposing it, it's essentially removing the value from this node setup and saying this is its own separate thing, which is independent per object. And it has a 2 birds, 1 stone kind of effect that it makes it more accessible. So in a completely different part of Blender, I'm working on my scene and I'm just very quickly giving different sprinkle amounts to different donuts, right? Like a madman, right? No one can stop me. But yeah, very cool. And that's now exposed. Oh, the other thing we probably want to do though, with that this group input here, is I want to give it a different name because density max, not really that useful. I can call it sprinkle density, right? So now it's like a fully customized little node group that I could drop on any object. I could be building a car in the future and I'm like, it needs sprinkles. And I can just drop this on it and I've got a sprinkle density value. For my car, right? So you can see how geometry nodes, you can build something really customized for what you want, and then it's just readily accessible every time you need to use it. Awesome. Now, one issue that I will show you with this, and actually it's not specific to geometry nodes, but this entire time for all these videos, we've been building a donut which is too big. So if you hit N in your properties, oh, that's the polygon thing, you can see the size, the dimensions of your donut is 1.2 by 1.2 meters, which for Americans, oh, actually, yeah, you can change it. You could change your units to the wacky imperial one. Yeah, 4 feet, right? Okay. Which is way too big. Okay. Now, why does it matter, right? Because okay, if you're looking at this, how are you to actually know that this is 1.2 meters rather than the regular size donut? It doesn't actually matter yet, but when we get to rendering with depth of field, or maybe you want to import other objects from other scenes, having a value that is actually true to the object will save you so much time. And it'll also make it so that your camera settings, etc., are actually correct. So that bit is very important. So essentially, we should resize this. And really, a real donut is about 12 centimeters, which is exactly 1/10 of what we've got right here. So if we select everything in the entire scene, which you can do by just hitting A for everything, I don't know, A for all, yeah, that makes more sense, okay. Then if we hit S to scale, okay, we're now in a scale, oh actually, okay, well now it's going to scale it and the plane is going to be off the ground, okay. All right, well let's not scale the lamp and the camera. So everything else, selecting the donut, the lamp, the donut, the plane, and the sphere. Then S, and then I want to scale it by exactly 10%. Now, how could I do that? Well, if you look in the top left-hand corner, you've got the values there. And if I went to 0.1, then it would be exactly a tenth of what it was. But how can I get it exactly at 0.1? Well, two things. One, if you hold down Control, when you're moving any value in Blender, it'll move it in increments, which in this case is 0.1. But you can also actually just type in the exact value you want, 0.1, and hit Enter. And now, if we look at the size of our donut, click N, hit N, you can see it's 0.12 meters or centimeters, you know. Anyway, and that's great. But there is a problem. What you might notice, I mean, there's not a problem now, but when you change the scale or the rotation of an object, actually, it's only changed its, what do you call it? Its local scale. It hasn't actually applied it on a global level yet. So the sprinkle here and the donut have actually got a like pretend value. The scale is set at 0.2, and it's almost like it's saying to the scene, that's not its real scale. It's just been faked to be that size yet. It needs to be applied if you want to like confirm really that this is the true scale or rotation of the thing. And you do that by selecting the things and then hitting Control A and then applying scale. Okay, so now we've done that, we can see something's changed. So our donut here with the sprinkles has now massively changed its density count. And the reason for this, we can see something's changed. Real scale, it's just been faked to be that size yet. It needs to be applied if you want to like confirm really that this is the true scale or rotation of the thing. And you do that by selecting the things and then hitting Control A and then applying scale. Okay, so now we've done that, we can see something's changed. So our donut here with the sprinkles has now massively changed its density count. And the reason for this is that, if we go to geometry nodes again, let's zoom in here, let's look at it with this. This density, this sprinkle density, is actually not the count of sprinkles at all. It's the density in relation to the whole scene. And the way I think of it is like, okay, it's a weird visualization, but if you've got a car and it's driving along a highway, right, a certain amount of bugs are going to hit the windshield, okay? And the bugs could be defined by here. But the smaller the object is, right, you could have the same amount of bugs going across the highway, but if it was like a tiny Matchbox car, there's going to be very few bugs that's going to hit it, okay? So the density is kind of like the density of the world, and now that we've made the object smaller, there's only 3 sprinkles left. There's only 3 bugs that's hit the windshield of our donut here. So this value now needs to be much bigger. In fact, it needs to be exactly like if it was 6,000 before, it needs to be, yeah, 60,000 now. But the problem is that it's not just a value here. The distance min value has also changed because this is also based on a real world value. So this now needs to be really small. So let's try 0.01. And that's actually pretty good, I think. There's a little bit of overlap, but that's roughly kind of what we want. And let's see if I can increase this. Yeah, so if I want this density to be really dense, yeah, I would have to increase it to a crazy number. Now, something I like to do personally, this isn't, you have to do this, but you notice how like this number is really large. And if I want to increase or lower my sprinkle value, and I'm in a different part of Blender, if I'm just dragging this value, it's having no effect because the range, like the scale of it is just so large. So what I actually do is I set it to a value that I think makes sense, which in this case is 200. And then whatever the value was before, it was 200,000, right? I do a math value inside of my geometry node setup. Between here and here, I do a math calculation to multiply that by the value that it needs to be, almost as like a scale adjustment. So you can do it with just one node, Shift A, Utilities, Math, and just drop it in here. Now the math, I said I want to multiply it, so I need to change it from add to a multiply. And math is the most versatile of any node. You can do all sorts of stuff, but multiply. So multiply, and it was 200,000 before. So if I want this value 200, then I just add 1,000. Yes, that's correct. Okay. So now I can very quickly change the scale of the sprinkles across the donut without having to like manually type in the value. I can just move it back and forth. And there you go. So that's it. So we've changed the scale of it to what it should be. We've got a correct density. Sorry, we've got a correct sprinkle setup, looking good. In the next part, we are going to be adding long sprinkles to our donuts because this round one is okay. And I originally was just going to go round to try and keep it simple, but there's also, I don't know, the long sprinkles just look way nicer. But you do have to do some different rotation math and stuff, so we're going to do that in a whole second video. So click here on the screen to learn all about that and